So let's take another deep breath together as we move into this part of our service. As you know, the theme for the month is the givingness in forgiving, in forgiveness, the givingness in forgiveness. The givingness in forgiveness. There's always a gift in forgiveness, and the gift is always for each one of us. And that's the givingness that we're giving to ourselves when we are practicing forgiveness. And so we're going to be talking about forgiveness throughout this month and really practicing forgiveness throughout this month, because forgiveness is always a current topic. It is always something that is available to us and something for us to choose over and over and over again. One thing I'd like to remind you of, if I didn't do so last week, which was our first Sunday in the month, was that whatever your quality that you chose to work on this year, or to allow to reveal itself in and through you this year, there's still a chance to do that. We are in the third quarter of the fourth quarter of the year, the last quarter of the year. So we still have time to work on whatever that quality was. And if you didn't do anything the whole 3 other quarters, you can forgive yourself. That's what we get a chance to do during this month. Just forgive yourself for not doing it and start right where you are. So whatever your quality may have been, whatever, even if you started it and dropped the ball, whatever the case may be, just do it. That's all you have to do. Just do it. Just pick it up and decide you're going to do it starting right here and right now. My topic for today is uncover the elephant. Uncover the elephant. Uncover the elephant. You know, we've all heard that expression, elephant in the room. The elephant in the room, there's an elephant in the room, and I'm sure we've all experienced the elephant in the room. The elephant in the room being a situation or circumstance or an issue that may be difficult, that we don't want to deal with, that we don't want to look at, that we don't want to address, that we don't want to even acknowledge that it's there. So we walk around it and pretend it isn't there. Sometimes it looks kind of like denial, because we aren't doing anything about whatever the case may be, whatever the situation may be, whatever the circumstance may be. We do that in our own individual lives. We do that in our work lives, our family life, our relationships. There's that elephant in the room. There's a situation that we just kind of sweep under the rug and pretend it doesn't exist. And we just let it stay there and then walk around it. Sometimes we even trip over it, and then we pretend we didn't trip over it. You know, it was the rug. It wasn't anything under it. I grew up in a household where we were really great about not addressing the elephant in the room in my family. And I think we still can do that sometimes. Just, it isn't there. You just, poof, it's gone. And, you know, elephants are the largest land animals on the planet. And they are exuberant animals. They are emotional animals. They are capable of experiencing complex emotions. They're capable of experiencing joy and anger and compassion and love. And they are quite remarkable animals. And, you know, when there's an elephant in the room, when we sweep a small issue under the rug, or maybe not so small issue under the rug, but whatever it is we sweep under the rug, if we don't deal with it, then it can grow into a full-blown elephant, into a full-grown elephant. And because elephants are so smart, and because they are so emotional and so exuberant, and then they start to run the show. If we aren't paying attention to whatever that elephant is, if we aren't addressing whatever that elephant may be, if we aren't addressing whatever the issue may be, then we start to operate from the place of the hidden, from the place of that which we are not addressing, that which we are not acknowledging. And so I'm inviting us all today to uncover the elephant. I'm inviting us all today to really uncover the elephant, to really acknowledge, first of all, that there is an elephant in the room. Acknowledge that there is an issue that needs to be addressed. Acknowledge that there is something that's difficult, that you don't want to face, that you don't want to, it brings discomfort. If we're dealing with other people, there's discomfort in having to discuss a particular issue, or there's some kind of uncertainty. We're not sure whether it's going to end a relationship. We aren't sure whether it's going to create a lot of chaos. We're not sure whether it's going to bring on a violent response or an unpleasant response. We're just not sure what's going to happen. So when we sweep it under the rug, it's because of some issue, that something that we are afraid of. It could be fear, it could be doubt, it could be shame, it could be guilt, it could be regrets, whatever the case may be. Whatever the case may be, we sweep it under the rug. Whatever the case may be, we sweep it under the rug, and then it just starts to grow and grow and grow. And then we start to act out accordingly. We start to act out in ways that we didn't even know that we were doing, because we are not dealing with whatever the issue is. Our relationships start to form and to morph into whatever they become, because of the elephant that's in the room, because of not whatever it is we need to address and we're not addressing. And so today I'm inviting you, starting out with just making sure that you acknowledge that there's an issue that needs to be addressed. If it's a family issue, if it's some at work issue, if it's a church issue, if there's a personal issue, whatever the case may be, make sure that you are acknowledging that there's an issue here that needs to be addressed. And one thing that I want to point up about the elephant in the room almost inevitably, invariably has underneath it a forgiveness issue. It has underneath it a forgiveness issue. And usually a huge forgiveness issue, because the fact that we don't deal with it allows it to grow and expand and continue to simmer until it just morphs into something that we don't want it to be. But as long as we are dealing with it, it just continues to just grow and grow and grow, because it's in the darkness. And so just knowing that there's a forgiveness issue under there, it also makes it difficult to acknowledge, because sometimes we don't want to deal with the forgiveness issue. Sometimes we don't want to deal with the issue that creates a need for forgiveness. But the short-term pain is so, the long-term gain is so worth the short-term pain. The long-term gain is so worth the short-term pain of dealing with whatever it is. And so that's what I'm inviting us to do today. First of all, to acknowledge that there is an elephant in the room. Acknowledge that there is a situation or a circumstance or an issue that has come up between you and someone else, that has come up between you and someone else in whatever area of your life, that has closed your heart, that has made a block in your relationship, has put you in a place where you are holding back. It has taken us into that place of separation rather than into that place of oneness. And when we are dealing with those things that we are not dealing with, those things that have become issues for us, then we are separating. We are closing off. We are blocking the flow. And we don't get to experience the givingness that happens with forgiveness and openness. We don't get to experience the allness and the fullness of the all that is, the allness and the fullness of the presence of God that is always in the midst of wherever we are, whatever we're doing, whatever our relationship may be. And so I'm inviting you today to really acknowledge, it could be acknowledge the issues in your life that you are dealing with in your different relationships. Acknowledge those issues, and then decide that, okay, there's something that exists here. Let me uncover this elephant. Let me uncover this elephant. That's the second thing. Uncovering the elephant means addressing it. Once you acknowledge that it's there, okay, there's an elephant, I've tripped over it, I've walked around it, I've climbed over it, I've done everything I can. I got to do something about this elephant. Pull this rug is not fitting any longer over it. And so then that's when we have to address it. It may be uncomfortable. It may be uncomfortable to talk with someone else about an issue that's going on, because you don't know what their response is going to be. You don't know if they're going to be mad at you, whether they're going to never speak to you again or leave, or whatever the case may be, or you might get fired, whatever the case may be. Whatever the case may be, but be willing to take a deep breath, trusting God and trusting in that oneness, and trusting in that God presence in the midst of everything that's going on, trusting in that God presence that's in the midst of the other person as well as within each one of us, trusting that it's God interacting with itself when we are interacting with each other, trusting that God presence, trusting that divine givingness and forgivingness, and then addressing whatever the issue may be. Addressing whatever the issue may be requires us to take a deep breath. Sometimes we may have to see a practitioner before we do, so that there's someone holding a space for us, as we go through that process. Sometimes, and it certainly requires us to do our own spiritual work. It requires us to do our own prayer practice. It requires us to engage in our own meditation practice and whatever spiritual practices we have. It requires us to do whatever it takes to heal our sense of separation from God. And when we heal our sense of separation from God, when we move away from that sense of separation from God, then we are more apt to deal with each other, because we don't feel that separation there either. We know that God is in the midst, and we know that God is in the midst of the situation, whatever it may be. So as we address this elephant, God is in the midst right here of this elephant, and it makes it so much less powerful. It makes it so much less scary. It makes us so much less scary. And so Ernest Holmes says, no matter what the doubts and fears of yesterday were, the affirmation of today may rise above them triumphant. No matter what the doubts and fears of yesterday may have been, the affirmation of today enables us to rise above them. The doubts and fears of yesterday, no matter what they were, the affirmation is knowing that God is in the midst. The affirmation is affirming and reaffirming to ourselves that God is right here in the midst of this. This enables us to rise triumphant above whatever it was that happened yesterday. And so, when we're dealing with the elephant in the room, it's always about something that happened yesterday. It's not about something that's happening right now. It's about something that happened yesterday that we are afraid of. And so I'm inviting you to really begin to, after you acknowledge that there's an issue, then to address that issue. It may mean talking it through. It may mean going to counseling. It may mean ending a relationship. It may mean doing whatever is required, but being willing to allow that divine guidance to show us the way, allow that divine protection to surround us, allow us to experience the allness and the fullness of God as we address whatever the issues may be. And as we uncover these issues, I was talking about uncovering the issues that come up in our relationships with others and how we interact in our lives with others. But we each have our own elephant, our own personal elephant. What is your personal elephant? What is the personal elephant in the room for you? It could be shame. It could be guilt. It could be so many different things. It could be regrets. It could be fear. It could be resistance, whatever the case may be. And so many of these things are undergirded by shame. The shame that we take on when there's something that we've done or that we feel about ourselves or that we don't like or whatever, that we don't want anybody else to find out about. So we don't talk about it, we don't address it. It may have been something that we did that could have been done differently. It may have been something we did not do that we maybe should have done. And I don't like using the word should, but I'm going to use it right here and right now. That because I don't like what's putting on those should blankets. But that's what we're doing, really. We're thinking when we get into shame, it's about shoulding also. And so when there's something that may have been better had we done it, or may have been better had we not done it, we get into that shoulding, and then there's a whole shame factor that comes around. So we don't talk about it, we don't acknowledge it, we get fearful about it. There may be some things that we can see we can imagine that there are dire consequences. So, when we get into those situations, we don't even pray about it. Because if you pray about it, you got to acknowledge that it's existing. You got to acknowledge that it's there. So you just pretend it isn't. You just move into denial. And then the elephant just starts to run your life. The elephant just starts to do what elephants do. They just start to experience all those emotions. They experience anger. They experience love. They experience grief. They experience all those things. And that's what we begin to experience in our lives, to the degree that we don't deal with that elephant that we're hiding behind, that elephant that we've covered up and stuffed under the rug. And so I'm inviting you to really, really uncover the elephant that you're hiding behind, that you've pushed under the rug, that you just aren't dealing with. Because I can assure you that if you're not dealing with it, you're not dealing with it, and it's still running your life. It's still running the show. It's still driving the bus. And elephants driving buses is not a real safe thing. It really is. They really aren't real safe in driving. And so what we want to do is to be in the driver's seat ourselves, and knowing that that when we're in the driver's seat, the real driver is spirit. The real driver is God. But God can't drive through us if there's an elephant sitting there. If there's an elephant sitting there. And so I'm inviting you to really address the elephant. Address the elephant, and then be willing to deal with it. Be willing to deal with whatever the situation may be. Be willing to look at it in all of its hugeness, in all of its maybe ugliness, and all of its darkness, and all of its whatever it is. Whatever it is, be willing to look at it, be willing to deal with it, be willing to say, okay, this is where I am. This is where I am. Be willing to pray about it. Be willing to have someone pray with you about it. Be willing to have someone pray for you about it. Be willing to let go and open up so that we can be free to live the lives that we were created to live, so that we can experience the givingness of God, so that we can experience the gifts of the Spirit, so that we can experience all the things that we were created to experience. But we can't do that so long as we're letting the elephant sit there. We can't do that so long as the elephant is sitting there. And so I invite you to really, really look at where is your own personal elephant. And sometimes so many other things come up in our lives that seem so unrelated. And as we go through looking at it and starting to acknowledge and starting to uncover, we recognize that everything is related. You see how this thing over here works with this thing over here and this thing over here. It's like, oh my gosh, all of these things work together. All of these things work together. I had the experience of working with, this week, I had the experience of working with my practitioner because I've been experiencing some pain in my body that I was like, okay, what is this all about? I need to really look at how can I let this go? And you know, the biggest thing for me always, the biggest elephant for me always is resistance. And it comes up in so many different ways. It comes up in so many different forms. It comes up in all kinds of ways. I can be real creative when it comes to resistance. And it usually outpictures in my body. And I began to realize that, you know, something's going on here. There's this elephant that needs to be uncovered. And did I want to do that? No. I love my practitioner. I love talking to her. But did I want to call her and talk to her about these things? Did I really want to go into doing the deep work that needed to be done to just really say, oh, this is related to that. And this is related. This is the way all this works together. And to unpack, because it's like unpacking, because it's been covered for a long time. So to start unpacking, that's what uncovering the elephant is like. It's like unpacking things that you've just been putting one thing on top of another 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 thing. You got a big old pile of elephant. You have a big old pile of elephant. And you know what? When you start to unpack it, it doesn't feel real good. It doesn't feel real, I want to say joyful. It doesn't feel real pretty, because uncovering the elephant is messy. It's messy and it can be painful. But again, it's short-term pain, and the gain is so long-term. The gain is so long-term. And I invite you to do this. I tell you things about myself because I want you to understand that this work is ongoing. So long as we are on this planet and these bodies, there's work for us to do. So long as we are having this human experience, there's work for us to do so that the spiritual being can be all that it was created to be, the spiritual being that we are. And so I share with you things that I experience. I share with you the unpleasantness of talking with my practitioner this past week. because it was an unpleasant experience. But you know what? I woke up, that was Friday. I woke up Saturday morning, I could walk a lot better. I had a lot less pain in my body. I was able to process through and find out exactly what was going on. It's like, it was that elephant that was sitting on my legs. It was that elephant that was doing whatever. And that's what I'm asking you to do. Just look at uncovering whatever it may be for you. And I recognize that for me, the quality this year that I'm working on that's been seeking to reveal itself through me has been order. Order shows up in so many different ways in my life. So I would not have even thought of different ways in which order shows up. What is the quality that you have chosen? What is the quality that's seeking to be revealed in and through and as your life? How is it showing up? What is it that you're hiding behind? What is it that you've pushed under the rug? What is that elephant that you're not dealing with? And so I invite you to uncover the elephant in your relationships with others and in your relationship with yourself, your personal elephant, because it's the personal elephant that will really hold us back. It's the personal elephant that will really block us. Because when we're dealing with the elephant, in order to cover the elephant up, we engage in all kinds of activities. We can engage in those, finding the anesthesia that's going to make it easier for us to not deal with the issue and to hide that elephant under the rug. We deal with over drinking, overeating, over sexing, overspending, whatever our anesthesia of choice is, whatever our drug of choice may be, we engage in that rather than dealing with whatever the issue is. And so that's what I'm inviting you to do today. And then thirdly and finally, choose forgiveness. Choose forgiveness. Take a breath. Choose forgiveness. I don't care how old that elephant is. I don't care how young that elephant is. I don't care how big it is. I don't care how much sense it makes for it to even be there. Doesn't matter. None of that matters. The important thing is it's affecting your life. It's blocking you from the allness and the fullness of life. It's blocking you from that unity with all of life. It's blocking us from that unity with spirit, from experiencing the allness and the fullness, from experiencing our wholeness, from experiencing our oneness with God. And when that's the case, and we know that we're doing that, that's where forgiveness comes in. That's the givingness in forgiveness. That's where the gift comes in, because we get to choose forgiveness. We can choose forgiveness. We can choose forgiveness. And you know what? We can also choose unforgiveness. We can choose not to forgive. The choice is ours. I invite you to choose forgiveness. Choose to let things go. Choose to open up. Choose to release the judgment. Choose to release the blame, the shame, the guilt, the regrets, all the things that the issues that I'm mentioning now, the blame, the shame, the guilt, those are issues of self-forgiveness. And people tell me over and over and over again that the hardest person for me to forgive is myself. There are things that I can forgive other people much easier than I can myself. That seems to be a real common thing in humankind, is forgiving ourselves. I'm saying to you, choose forgiveness of yourself. Choose to forgive yourself. Choose to let yourself be free. Choose to not punish yourself. Because so long as you're not forgiving, so long as you're not uncovering the elephant, as the reading was saying, that there is no sin, there's a mistake. So long as you're continuing to not acknowledge and not deal with, then the mistake continues. And so long as the mistake continues, the punishment continues. Because that's the punishment is the consequence. So long as the mistake continues, the consequence continues. And the consequence is the punishment. And so I'm inviting you to choose forgiveness, choose to let it go, choose to open up and say, this was painful, this was uncomfortable, this felt shameful, this felt whatever the case may be. I'm sorry it happened. I'm sorry I held on to it for so long. But the only thing, what I can do right now, the most empowering thing I can do right now, and the most powerful thing I can do right now is to forgive. I can forgive myself for this. I can release myself from eternal shame. I can release myself from eternal punishment. I can release myself from this by choosing forgiveness. And that's what I'm inviting you to do today. Choose forgiveness, choose the givingness, because the givingness and forgivingness, in forgiveness is our own givingness to ourselves, the gift of forgiveness. And that's what I'm inviting you to do. Forgive yourself. Of course, forgive others. And don't allow forgiving yourself don't use forgiving yourself as an excuse not to forgive others. Because sometimes people will say, if I just forgive myself, that's the only forgiveness I need to do. No, that's not the way that works. That's not the way that works. We have to forgive others and we have to forgive ourselves. And so I'm inviting us today to forgive ourselves for the mistakes we have made. Forgive ourselves for the way that we have held on to things. Forgive ourselves for continuing to hold on to things and for sweeping stuff under the rug and for letting that elephant grow to enormous proportions. Forgive ourselves for all this time that the elephant's been under that rug, and say, you know what, I'm not doing it any longer. I'm starting. Today is a new day. This moment is a new moment. I start my life right here and right now from this moment. And I forgive myself all the time I didn't do it before. And here I am right here. This is a new day, a new way. And allow yourself to experience this new day and experience this new way. That's how we uncover the elephant. And that's how, once we uncover, we move forward in oneness with the all that is. We move forward in God through forgiveness. We move forward in God through forgiveness. As I said last week, move through the world, view the world through the eyes of forgiveness. Walk through the world in the energy of forgiveness. Be the atmosphere of forgiveness as we go through our lives. Let's take a deep breath and turn within and do some prayer right here and right now. Just moving into that place of freedom, just moving into that place of knowing and sensing and feeling God's presence, and moving into that place of knowing that God is the only presence, the only power, the only love, the only breath, the only activity is God. And just knowing this truth, I know this onlyness is my very life. It is the life of each of us here this day. How awesome it is to know the truth of this. That God is that from which I can never be separate, no matter how many elephants I may have had in the room or shoved under the rug or whatever the case may be. God is right where I am, always in the midst of each situation and each circumstance. The same is true for each one of us, that God is the source of our being. God is our very life. God is always right where we are in the midst of everything. And so knowing this truth, I speak this word for each of us this day. Just speaking a word of freedom. Speaking a word of freedom. Speaking a word of freedom, the freedom that we experience through the act of forgiveness. Speaking a word of freedom that we experience through love. Speaking a word of freedom through the act of releasing and letting go. Speaking a word of freedom that we experience in our oneness with God. And as we walk through this time, I'm knowing that each of us experiences to the fullest degree our oneness with God. We release and we let go of anything that would block, anything that would hinder, anything that would encumber in any way. We let it go. We let go of the shame. We let go of the guilt. We let go of the regret. We let go of the whatever it is we may be holding on to, doubts and fears and resistance. We let all that go. And we open up and allow the fullness of God, the light of God, the beauty of God, the love of God to fill us up, to move us forward, to heal all those unhealed places as we lift them up into the light. And so I know that this word goes out to anyone needing a prayer this day, anyone on this planet needing a prayer this day. I know that God is in the midst of every situation and circumstance and event. God is underneath every rug. God is in the midst of everything. And so I pause momentarily so that you may speak the names of anyone you'd like held in prayer in this moment. You may speak their names silently or aloud, and you may speak them now. And so for all those whose names were spoken here this day, I know that God is in the midst of everything. God is in the midst of everything going on. God is right where each one of them is. This word goes out to our government officials who make decisions, knowing that they are making decisions for the highest and best for all concerned, knowing that God is in the midst of decision making. God is guiding and directing and opening hearts and moving in and through each situation, each circumstance, and that we all benefit as we come together in God, in that one place of unity, of knowing who we really are. And so I just simply say, thank you, Father, Mother God, for the opportunity to forgive, to release, to let go, to open up, that each of us is experiencing right now. Thank you for the healing that is happening in every aspect, every area of our lives, in our body temples, in our bodies of affairs, the healing of any sense of separation that we may have in any area. I give great thanks for the healing of all of this. I know indeed that all is well. I know indeed that all is God. And so I say, thank you, Father, Mother God. Thank you, Divine Mother. Thank you, Infinite Presence. I simply allow it to be now. And so it is.